A lifeless body on a lonely mountain pass.
And it was a very sad ending to a real short life.
She gets thrown away, murdered and thrown away.
A young victim who fell through the cracks.
She was just all alone. She is a human in a sea of humans.
A tangled web of violence and betrayal.
He said they're all gone. He said they're all burnt.
Okay, you're lying. Now the next question is why?
It's up to Lieutenant Joe Kenda to fight for the dead.
Family doesn't care. Friends don't care. All she has is us. Let's not disappoint her. It's a torturous death. It is one where the killer doesn't just want to kill you. They want to feel you die.
My name is Lieutenant Joe Kenda. I've solved almost 400 homicides. Every case is unique, but there's one thing that never changes. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories.
On the rural outskirts of Colorado Springs, a police cruiser winds its way up a dark mountain pass known as Gold Camp Road. Typically, officers only come up here to break up keg parties and confiscate alcohol from minors, but not tonight.
Patrol officers received a call that led us to believe that somebody had seen something regarding a body up on Gold Camp Road.
The anonymous caller claimed a female body had been dumped near an overlook known as Point Sublime.
He discovered the body down the hillside, down the slope.
She was well-dressed, jeans, dark shirt, a jacket. Looked to be just like your average, in this case, very young victim.
Officers estimate the girl to be somewhere between the ages of 18 and 20. But her identity and the cause of death are still unknown.
Could somebody have been walking and fallen? Yes, that's a possibility. Hypothermia is a possibility. So we had to look at all kinds of different things before we were able to make that determination.
Police must also consider the possibility of foul play.
Lieutenant Kenda.
At 10 p.m., dispatchers notify Lieutenant Joe Kenda, homicide detective and head of the Major Crimes Unit.
We'd been working overtime for days. But unfortunately, these things aren't scheduled. Anonymous calls are placed. Discoveries are made. Bodies are found. Okay, let's go see what this is about.
Hey guys, how you doing? How you doing?
Kenda and his detectives arrive on the scene. And he orders his men to inspect the body.
We were able to roll the body over. It was pretty obvious to me that she'd been there quite a while.
Equally obvious is the cause of death. One that quickly raises the alarm.
Lieutenant, what do you got? You're gonna need to come down here.
They turn her, and they notice a ligature mark on her throat. A ligature is a device used in strangulation, something you can apply pressure to the neck with. People believe you can strangle someone very quickly. You can't. It's a torturous death. It is one where they want to feel you die.
Kenda descends into the ravine and examines the victim. She appears much younger than he first imagined.
You look at this kid and you think, how could you have gotten to this in such a short time in your life? To wind up here with your throat crushed.
Whatever happened to the young girl, crime scene techs believe it didn't happen here.
And there was no sign of a struggle. There wasn't really anything at the scene other than the body itself.
Not only have a whodunit, we have a who isn't. She has a circle of friends. She has someone who last saw her alive. She has all kinds of things we need to find out that we can't know until we identify her.
Detectives start by going through the girl's pockets, but it seems the killer has cleaned them out.
There's no papers on her to identify her, no wallet, no identification card.
Upon closer inspection, one detective spots a clue on the teenager's hand.
One of the identifying marks that we found on the victim at that time was a small tattoo in the webbing of one of her hands where it had the initials J and M.
Reds! Sir! I need you to check missing persons for a young girl with the initials JM on her left hand. Yes, sir.
Officers radio this information into dispatch and learn the anonymous tipster has called back.
Our anonymous caller says the victim's name is Maggie and that we should look at a Jill Youssef. So the next question is obvious. Who are you, Jill? The killer? The person that dumped her over the side? Somebody who came by later and didn't call the police?
Detectives run the name Jill Youssef through police records. They immediately get a hit.
Jill Youssef had an arrest with the Colorado Springs Police Department recently, just prior to this homicide, in which she was arrested for a shoplift.
29-year-old Jill had been caught stealing clothing from a local department store. And according to the police report, Jill had help.
It's just so not my fault.
With her at the time of the arrest and a participant in the theft is a Margaret Fetty, known as Maggie.
That kind of tied at least the name Maggie and Jill together for us.
But that's not all police records reveal.
Margaret Fetty is a blonde female, blue-eyed, and has a tattoo bearing the initials JM. I am now 99.9% convinced that our Jane Doe is in fact Margaret Fetty.
In an effort to notify the victim's next of kin, investigators dig deeper into Maggie's records. But there's no one to call.
When you work a murder case, you always want to establish everything you can about the background of a victim. We couldn't produce a photograph of Maggie. No one had one, not even as a baby.
She'd become a ward of the state, so she was dependent of the Department of Social Services.
Her mother disavowed her. Father whereabouts was unknown.
The state had placed Maggie with a local organization called Chins Up, a group home that specializes in abandoned children.
Chins Up is a great place for kids to be able to go to school, be fed, have a nice environment, but it's not home.
On contacting Chins Up, detectives learn that Maggie ran away from the center a year ago. Since then, she's been living on the streets.
She was just all alone. You're in a situation where you have no support, no adult supervision. She really had nobody looking out for her but herself.
She is a human in a sea of humans.
Basically, she was 15 going on 25, you know?
So how did Jill and Maggie know each other? And what possible connection could Jill have to Maggie's murder? Detectives couldn't imagine the twisted tale that would unfold. A tale that would plunge this case even deeper into mystery.
The possibility of being a killer is in all of us. Animals kill for need. They kill because they have to. Humans kill because they want to.
Following an anonymous tip, Colorado Springs police find 16-year-old Maggie Fetty strangled to death off a mountain road outside of town. Given Maggie's age and the brutal nature of her murder, it's an especially disturbing case.
Maggie was an adolescent child who ultimately nobody cared about, and she gets thrown away, literally. Murdered and thrown away. This girl had no contact with anyone. The only people that were concerned about her were me and my guys.
It's my job to stand for her, to move forward so that we can find justice as to who did this and why.
When I talk about it, my stomach gets upset. I see it over and over and over. You look at this child at this crime scene, there'd be a flash and I'd see my daughter instead of Maggie. And you think, oh, God, I don't want to lose anybody's daughter. Not mine, not anybody else's. Somebody has to pay for this.
Thanks to an anonymous tipster, detectives have identified a woman who might have some answers. 29-year-old Jill Youssef, an acquaintance of Maggie's.
It's not enough evidence to say that she's responsible for this death, but it is somebody that we can tie to and start at least contacting to try to obtain information.
In the early hours of December 4th, detectives knock on Jill Youssef's front door. A bleary-eyed Jill answers and agrees to come down to the station for questioning.
And through so she could relate very well. It was amazing how well they clicked together.
In fact, Jill tells Kenda that she and Maggie had grown so close they even had matching tattoos.
They each had a little tattoo, JM, referring to Jill and Maggie. Each one of them had the same tattoo on their hands.
We became very close over the last year.
By all appearances, Jill Youssef doesn't behave like a suspect. In fact, Jill doesn't even appear to be aware that her best friend is dead.
So we say, well, you're really good friends with Maggie, aren't you? Oh, yeah, I am. I'm really good friends.
We're pretty much like sisters.
Well, your friend Maggie is dead.
Jill breaks down in tears, seemingly devastated by the news of Maggie's death. But Lieutenant Kenda suspects Jill might be holding something back.
Her demeanor, her body language has guilt written all over it. She can't sit still. We say, we found Maggie last night on a Gold Camp Road. And not only do I think you know about that, I think you're involved in it. Tell me I'm wrong.
If you didn't kill her, this is your chance to tell us your side of the story.
And Jill spills her guts.
Though adamant that she had nothing to do with the crime, Jill tearfully admits that she knows the killer's identity.
It was one of my friends.
Jill claims that Maggie was strangled by a mutual friend, a woman by the name of Melinda Stewart.
Jill was friends with Melinda. She was also friends with Maggie. They palled around together. Jill's statement was clearly saying that Melinda was the responsible party for this death.
Kenda and his team step out of the room and run a background check on Melinda Stewart.
Melinda does not have a criminal record. She's 29 years old. She's married to a sergeant in the United States Army. Nothing about her life or her circumstances would indicate that she's capable of killing someone.
Skeptical of the accusation, detectives circle back to Jill. That's when she makes another startling admission.
She openly admitted that she was present at the time the homicide occurred.
According to Jill, it happened 3 nights ago on what started as a typical Saturday evening. Jill had been hanging out at the Stewart's apartment, keeping Melinda company while her husband and his army buddies swapped stories. Melinda suggested they have a girls' night on the town.
She says they're going to go out and they're going to take Maggie out. Okay. Then what? Well, we go pick up Maggie, or we buy a bottle of tequila. We decide we're going to go up on the Gold Camp Road and look at the city lights and drink. Jill says she's driving this car.
Oh my gosh.
And that Maggie is in the right front passenger seat, and Melinda is sitting in the back. And they're all talking and laughing and passing around a bottle of tequila.
Shut up!
The trio pulled off and parked at Point Sublime. According to Jill, that's when it happened.
Jill says, for no apparent reason, Melinda grabs an ace bandage that's inside the car and begins to strangle Maggie from behind. That Maggie is struggling to save herself. Jill is trying to stop Melinda. Jill says Melinda looks at her with blood in her eye and says, "If you stop me, you're next."
According to Jill, once Melinda was sure Maggie was dead, she forced Jill to help her dispose of the body.
Strangled and dumped on the side of the road. Discarded like a piece of trash. How could somebody do that?
It's a chilling account, and Jill's tearful delivery seems genuine. But detectives still don't know why on earth would Melinda want Maggie Fetty dead.
The only motive Jill was able to provide to us was that she believed Melinda was, quote, crazy.
Jill says that Melinda suffered from some sort of severe mental illness.
Jill advised us that Melinda was now at Cedar Springs Psychiatric Hospital, that her husband had placed her there on the night of the murder.
Hours later, Kenda and his team are standing in the admitting room at Cedar Springs.
They talk to the staff. Is Melinda Stewart a patient in this facility? Yes, she is. Brought in here yesterday by her husband, who reported that he thought she was having a nervous breakdown.
Detectives ask the hospital staff if they can speak to Melinda. Moments later, out walks a nurse with a disheveled young woman on her arm.
She has every appearance of being someone who is deeply disturbed. Her eyes are wandering. She has difficulty standing.
And the moment Melinda Stewart opens her mouth, it becomes clear the interview is going to be anything but routine.
She looks at one of my detectives, the first one she sees, and says, "Are you dead?"
"17 hours after finding the body of 16-year-old Maggie Fetty, Joe Kenda is closing in on an unlikely murder suspect, 28-year-old Army wife Melinda Stewart. According to mutual friend Jill Youssef, Melinda strangled Maggie to death on Gold Camp Road.
Melinda attacks and kills Maggie for a reason Jill doesn't know.
Then, according to Jill, Melinda forced her to help dispose of Maggie's body. Kenda and his team have tracked Melinda to a local psychiatric hospital. But it's clear from the get-go that interrogating her won't be easy.
She offered up a very childlike demeanor, making statements that almost like a preschooler would talk.
If you're going to talk to somebody like this, are you going to get an intelligent waiver of rights? I'm doubtful of that. But I'm certainly going to try.
We're actually police officers. Can I ask you a few questions?
Okay.
Melinda readily agrees to be interviewed at the hospital, but her bizarre behavior doesn't let up.
She started off with some of her same childlike comments. Maggie's asleep. Not saying Maggie's dead, but saying Maggie's asleep.
Kenda plays along, addressing Melinda like a little girl.
Can you tell me how she went to sleep?
Melinda begins to talk about it. Begins to say Maggie is cold. Somebody needs to bring Maggie a coat. She then describes the evening and says that she and Jill and Maggie go up on the Gold Camp Road to drink tequila and look at the city lights. Exactly similar to what Jill says.
But as Melinda's confession continues, Kenda notices a glaring conflict with Jill's version of events.
Jill let me drive.
Melinda says that Melinda is driving the car, and now Jill is in the back seat, so she reverses the positions.
That's not all Melinda reverses.
She then says that they're sitting there in the car, and Jill, for some unknown reason, attacks Maggie with an ace bandage and is strangling her. And Melinda says, I try to stop it, but Jill tells her that she's next if she interferes.
Please don't let her hurt me.
So her story is ultimately the mirror image of Jill's story.
It's not the account Kenda expected. And coming from a woman who's clearly unstable, it's not the most reliable either. Still, Kenda can't help but wonder if Melinda's story could be true.
I'm not a psychiatrist, but I talk to lots of people. Do I think that Melinda's disturbed? Yeah, she is. Does that translate to the personality of a killer? No.
Without a clear idea of what transpired, Kenda can't charge either Jill or Melinda with murder. But he can hold them on charges of obstruction of justice.
At this point, believe them both. And they both stay locked up in the can until we get to more of this.
With Jill and Melinda in custody, detectives need to find a witness who can shed some light on the truth. The best place to start is with Melinda's husband, U.S. Army Sergeant Daniel J. Stewart.
He's been in the Army for some time. He's in an engineering battalion. He builds bridges. Seems to be reasonably intelligent.
Is that him? It looks like him. Sure does.
Sergeant Stewart seems astounded to learn his wife is suspected of murder.
He's very cooperative. He's absolutely. A murder? Oh my God. How could that be true?
Back at the station, Kenda sits down with Sergeant Stewart, hoping he can shed some light on the murder and his wife's unstable mental condition.
So why don't you tell me what happened on Saturday night?
I asked Daniel, what is up with your wife? And he laughs. And he said, oh, you mean her characters?
Dan was the first one to volunteer to us that Melinda had some multiple personality problems.
According to Sergeant Stewart, Kenda hasn't spoken with the real Melinda yet.
I know that sounds crazy, but it's true.
It sounds to him like detectives met Limmy Sue, one of 4 different personas living in Melinda's mind.
She is Melinda Stewart, his wife. She is Amanda von Hofstein. She is a 5-year-old girl named Limmy Sue. And she is a person known as the Clown.
She doesn't have a dangerous bone in her body.
And you're sure about that?
Absolutely.
Well, Kenda can't help but wonder if perhaps another character could have emerged the night Maggie was murdered.
Is there a possibility there could be another personality there that might be more violent or dangerous? Or
Not my wife, no. No way.
We asked Dan when Melinda and Jill left, was Melinda herself or was she one of these other people? Oh no, she was herself. She was Melinda. She'd been fine all day.
Sergeant Stewart tells Kenda there was nothing unusual about Melinda's behavior the night of the murder. He and some Army pals had been playing cards when Melinda and Jill decided to have a girls' night out.
Fine. You guys have a good night. Be good.
A few hours later, Melinda and Jill returned.
did you happen to see them when they got back?
I did. Everything seemed fine.
How'd they look?
Okay, nothing out of the ordinary.
They come back, everybody's in a good mood, everybody's happy, no mention of Maggie.
But according to Sergeant Stewart, the next day, Melinda's multiple personalities began to surface, one after another after another.
He said Monday was the last straw. I thought she was having a nervous breakdown, and so I took her into the hospital.
Detectives believe that Melinda's meltdown is connected to the murder. But did Melinda's meltdown cause her to kill? Or did witnessing Maggie's death trigger the meltdown?
Dan believed that Jill Yusuf was the one ultimately responsible for strangling Maggie. He could not believe that his wife would do that.
Even so, Kenda and his team will need more evidence before they can charge either Jill or Melinda with murder. Sergeant Stewart tells detectives that there's someone else they should speak with. His friend, James Catlin.
Who's James Catlin? Well, he's the guy who works with me. He's a boat specialist in the engineering battalion, and he and I work together. He dates Jill off and on.
According to Stewart, the ladies borrowed Catlin's car on the night in question.
Hey, babe. Yeah. Can I get the car keys, please?
Where are you going this late?
We're gonna go.
You good?
Yeah,
You and Melinda?
Yeah, we're gonna pick up Maggie.
Later that evening, detectives bring Catlin in for questioning. His account of the evening gels with the one given earlier in the day by Sergeant Stewart.
James Catlin provided a story that was consistent with the information we received during an interview with Daniel Stewart. And that basically was they had no knowledge of anything.
Kenda interviews many of Jill and Melinda's friends, but no one offers any new insights. Privately, he begins to wonder if the true killer will ever come to light.
We're still meeting people, we're still talking to people, we're still not getting very far. So a lot of activity, no results. We just need another hook. I don't know what that is yet. Another piece of information from somebody. Then we get a phone call. That's very interesting indeed.
It's been 2 weeks since police drove up Gold Camp Road and found the lifeless body of teenage runaway Maggie Fetty.
This is a case involving the loneliest, saddest little girl I've met in a long time. She is truly alone in the middle of 300 million people. Who could kill a child violently and personally? If they'll do this to this child, what else will they do?
Lieutenant Joe Kenda has two friends of the victim in custody.
Let's go.
Jill Youssef and Melinda Stewart. Both claim to have witnessed the crime firsthand, but each maintains they saw the other strangle the teenager.
They are telling stories that are the reverse of each other. Which one is true? I don't know. They stay under arrest until we learn more about this.
Finally, on December 17th, detectives receive a tip that could jumpstart the investigation. They get a call from a woman by the name of Penny Rhodes.
She is Melinda's sister. She now wants to talk to the police about what she knows about this.
Penny, who claims that her father was the anonymous tipster, says that she recently spoke to Melinda's husband, Sergeant Dan Stewart.
He did tell her that he had destroyed some of the evidence, some of the clothing that was worn by the two individuals on the night of the murder.
I'm looking out for us, I'm looking out for her. I will take care of everything. Everything's fine.
How are you gonna take care of it?
They said they're all gone, they're all burnt, all the clothing Melinda wore, all the clothing that Joe wore, it was all gone, everything.
How is it gonna be okay?
Because I took care of everything.
You took care of everything.
If no one said anything, then no one would ever know anything.
It's an eye-opening statement, one Sergeant Stewart neglected to mention in his interview. For Kenda, it's also ample cause to book the sergeant for conspiracy after the fact, a rare charge for men of his rank.
Here's a guy who's a sergeant in the United States Army, leader of men, and he is destroying evidence in a murder case. He's accepting a leadership role in a criminal enterprise. He is a liar that has talked to us on more than one occasion. So I'm not only going to arrest him, we're going to confront him.
We arranged for him to come up and be interviewed again. We didn't tell him about the warrant deliberately. We wanted to see what he had to say.
I told you guys.
You've left out quite a bit. We know a lot more than you realize.
Kenda immediately starts asking about Penny Rhodes.
She filled in a lot of details that you failed to mention.
I said she talked to you, didn't she, Dan? And you told her some things. Remember that, Danny? Something you might have overlooked when we talked to you the first time?
And you could see a little revelation in him when that occurred. It's that he was now aware that he needs to start talking.
Sergeant Stewart confesses that shortly after Melinda and Jill came home that night, each woman pulled him aside and informed him of Maggie's murder.
They were just playing it. She got in the car. No.
Both claiming that the other was responsible. Not knowing who to believe, Stewart collected their clothes and burned the evidence, all to keep his wife out of trouble.
I didn't want Jill to blame Melinda, so I burned their clothes.
You burned evidence to a murder.
And he said, all I did was that. I destroyed that evidence, yes. but I didn't do anything else. Well, Dan, in your case, that's going to be enough. You're under arrest for accessory to crime. So now we've moved from 2 to 3 people in custody, and we still don't know what happened.
Is there anything else you want to tell us, Dan?
Kenda presses Stewart for more witnesses. Someone else who was at the apartment that Saturday night. Someone who might be able to corroborate Stewart's statement. That's when Stewart blurts out a name. One police haven't heard yet.
He said, well, Silas Nelson was there. Who's he? Well, he's a kid I know in the Army. He's getting out of the Army next month.
Stewart explains that Silas Nelson is a fellow soldier stationed at Fort Carson. But the moment Sergeant Stewart mentions Silas Nelson, he begins to backtrack. He tells Kenda that on second thought, Silas wasn't at his house the night of the crime.
Silas Nelson was not there when the girls went out, when they came back, all this sort of thing. He wasn't around.
For Stewart, it's a slip of the tongue. For Kenda, it's the clue he's been searching for.
You listen very, very carefully when people talk. It's one thing to lie. It's very, very difficult to lie consistently. There are changes. They might be subtle, but they're there. I said, you know, you've always been saying how you didn't know anything about this. And you've always been lying, Danny. You've always been lying.
Kenda sends Sergeant Stewart off for booking and sets out in search of Silas Nelson, hoping the soldier can offer something, anything to bring the investigation back to life. Little does Kenda realize this long-shot witness is about to tear down a web of lies nearly a month in the making.
After all of this, repeated conversations and accusations and so on, we finally get to the bottom of this. This time, it's the truth.
Nearly a month into the search for Maggie Fetty's killer, Joe Kenda has made 3 arrests but little progress.
We have to know the truth, and we're not getting it yet. We're just not getting it.
The crime's 2 prime suspects, Jill Youssef and Melinda Stewart, are still pointing fingers at each other.
You've got 2 women under arrest and in custody. We have them accusing each other of doing that. Do we know who's right? No. We're still at the point of who else can we talk to here?
Melinda Stewart's husband, Sergeant Dan Stewart, has admitted to destroying the clothes the women were wearing the night of the crime. But just before heading off to jail, Sergeant Stewart let slip the name of another possible eyewitness, a fellow soldier by the name of Silas Nelson.
It was provided by Mr. Catlin as an individual that they somewhat hung out with, that had been at their apartment.
Detectives track down Silas Nelson at Fort Carson Army Base and begin to question him.
How you doing? I'm Lieutenant Joe Kenda.
We say, we have a problem here. We've been working a case for several weeks involving some people you know. Daniel Stewart, Melinda Stewart, and Jill. Oh yeah, I know them all.
Nelson tells Kenda that contrary to Dan Stewart's statement, he was at the Stewart's place the night of the murder.
Sir, I actually stayed the whole weekend.
I was there the whole time and never left. So you were there Saturday night? Yes. And you were there Sunday all day? Yes.
It's a shocking revelation, one that calls Sergeant Stewart's whole statement into question.
We asked Nelson, were you there when they came back? No, I went to bed, so I wasn't up when they came home. No. But, boy, I was there before they left. What do you mean? They had quite a conversation. Please continue, Mr. Nelson.
They're talking about this girl.
Do you know what girl they were talking about?
Her name was Maggie.
He says the girls start yapping about Maggie. Maggie is causing them problems, and they're tired of Maggie, and I'm listening to them. And I'm kind of not believing what I'm hearing, but they're talking about killing her.
And exactly what did they say?
If Nelson is telling the truth, then Maggie's murder wasn't the work of either Jill or Melinda. It was the two of them conspiring together.
You see how she looked at him?
It was a very eye-opening interview. Yeah, he had a lot of information to put these two parties as part of the conspiracy to commit this crime.
But according to Nelson, Jill and Melinda weren't the only ones talking about killing Maggie.
How would you strangle somebody?
Within minutes, Sergeant Stewart and Sergeant Catlin both joined the conversation.
And he thought it was just a joke. But he said the more I listened, the more I realized they were serious.
You guys want to kill somebody? I can show you how to kill somebody.
According to Nelson, Sergeant Stewart not only assisted in the cover-up of Maggie Fetty's murder, he and Catlin helped orchestrate it as well.
You are an active participant in the planning of the event, and that makes you chargeable for the crime. You are in this up to your neck.
For Kenda, there are still two lingering questions. Who strangled the teenage runaway, and why? After upgrading Sergeant Stewart's charges to murder, Kenda has Sergeant Catlin arrested, then grills him for answers.
All right, James. We're all done playing games now.
We tell him, this is your opportunity, Catlin, because you're going to go down for this crime. We know a lot more than we did the last time we spoke. Tell us what you know. He finally looks at us and says, everything I told you up to now, throw it all away. I lied about everything.
Maggie was a bad influence, all right?
Sergeant Catlin admits that along with Jill and Melinda, he and Sergeant Stewart knowingly conspired to kill Maggie Fetty.
He openly admitted every one of them had a benefit with the death of Maggie.
According to Sergeant Catlin, Maggie was heavily into drugs. Maggie's destructive behavior started to rub off on Jill and Melinda.
He said she got Jill involved in drugs. I didn't like it when Jill was involved in drugs, so I had no use for Maggie. She would get Melinda involved in drugs, and Dan had no use for that.
Full of surprises.
Sergeant Catlin claims that he tried to shut Maggie out of Jill and Melinda's lives.
You guys are into this?
But with Maggie feeding their new drug habit, it was a hard bond to break. Then, just a few days prior to the murder, Maggie gave Jill a tab of LSD that was nearly fatal.
Maggie gets something different for Jill, and Jill gets really sick.
Fine, you can breathe. Stewart! Look at me. Calm down.
They are infuriated by this.
What happened to Maggie?
We were getting tired of her being around, you know?
According to Catlin, Jill and Melinda wanted to get even with Maggie, and when they revealed their plan to kill Maggie, the two sergeants jumped at the notion and even gave advice on the best way to do it.
Why don't you show us stuff, guy?
No, I can show you what to do.
He gets this ace bandage, and then Dan and he show the girls how to use it. Stood behind them, showed them how to put pressure, showed them how to pull somebody down using it. After they do that demonstration, they decide they're going to go get Maggie, they're going to take her up on a Gold Camp Road, and they're going to kill her.
As for who physically strangled the teenager, Sergeant Catlin claims that Melinda did the honors.
James ultimately stated that Melinda had told him she was the one who had done the strangling. She's the one that pulled on the ligature and killed Maggie.
For Kenda, it's the key to the whole case, one that finally unlocks the truth about Maggie Fetty's murder.
So after all this information, all these interviews, we discover we're back to almost the original story. They go up on a Gold Camp Road. We now know Jill's driving the car, Melinda's in the back seat. Melinda attacks this girl from behind. Jill is a participant in this crime. She's not trying to save Maggie. When Maggie dies, Jill and Melinda take her out of the car, dump her, throw away the evidence, return to the apartment.
Ultimately, district attorneys arrive at the same conclusion and prosecute all four co-conspirators to the fullest extent of the law.
The evidence was sufficient to show that they all planned it,
They all knew what was going to happen, and they were all involved in it. They were all equally guilty.
But in exchange for reduced charge, finds Kenda shaking hands with the victims' families, but not Maggie Fetty's.
After she was dead, nobody ever came knocking on my door. What about my daughter? What are we doing? How do we know what happened? Nothing. No inquiries from the concerned relatives, because there aren't any. We could say to ourselves, we did the right thing here for a girl who desperately needed someone to do something right for her. We were just too late to save her life, but we took punishment against those who took her life.
When the time comes to lay Maggie to rest, no one shows up to handle her funeral arrangements. Kenda and his fellow lawmen do it themselves.
We chipped in and we bought her a headstone. One should at least have evidence of their passing.
For Joe Kenda, the headstone is a reminder of why he chose a life in law enforcement.
I couldn't stop a murder. I couldn't undo one. What's done is done. But I could certainly find the person responsible and make sure that at least they weren't going to do it again.
Society has a way of ignoring the most vulnerable. But when it comes to murder, nobody slips through the cracks. Not a culprit, not a co-conspirator, and certainly not Maggie Fetty.
Can we change this? Can we bring Maggie back? No. Can we at least salute her at the end of the day? Yeah, we can do that. At least she'll have that. Because she certainly didn't have anything else.
Kenda let the silence sit for a moment after Jennifer's confession. Not because he enjoyed tension, but because silence is often the only honest reaction left when a case reveals what it's really about. He didn't dress it up with dramatic words. He didn't need to. The logic spoke for itself. A robbery that was really a costume, a plan that wasn't random, and a motive that hid behind polite faces and everyday routines. Mara Vance sat across from him on the edge of his living room chair, like she was trying to keep her sarcasm on a leash. Jonah Cade could tell she wanted to say something, anything, to break the heaviness of it. But even Mara understood there were moments when humor had to wait in the hallway with its shoes off. Kenda's gaze stayed steady, trained on the past. When you work these cases, he said, you learn something nobody wants to learn. People will stage a lie if the truth would make them look bad. They'll put a mask on the crime, not because they're clever, but because they think you're predictable. They think you'll chase what they leave behind. Cade felt the anonymous note in his pocket again, like a cold pebble. You caught the bait. Whoever wrote, it wasn't just trying to threaten him. They were trying to teach him a lesson in reverse, trying to prove the police could be guided like a flashlight being pointed at the wrong wall. Kenda's eyes flicked to Cade. You've got someone playing with you, he said. Not a question. A fact. Mara finally spoke, softly but with bite. We prefer the term professionally irritated, she said. Kenda's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile. Good, he replied. Stay irritated. It keeps you alive. He leaned forward, hands clasped. Now, he continued, since we're talking about people who want you to chase the wrong thing, let me tell you about a girl who didn't even have a family to chase anything at all. The room shifted. Cade felt it. This was a different kind of story, one that didn't come with a supportive neighborhood and tidy grief. This one came with absence. Kenda described a mountain pass outside Colorado Springs, a dark road people went to for stupid reasons on weekend nights. Drinking, showing off, pretending the rules didn't apply once the city lights were far enough behind them. Officers usually went up there to break up underage parties and send teenagers home with disappointed expressions and confiscated beverages. Not to find a body. But one night, dispatch received an anonymous call. Someone claimed a young woman had been dumped near an overlook, a place with a name that sounded poetic and turned out to be anything but. Patrol rolled up the pass under cold sky and harsh headlights, and they found her down a slope, young, dressed like a normal kid, no identification, no wallet, nothing that said who she was. Just a person left in a place that implied she'd been thrown away. Mara's voice slipped out in a whisper. People think the mountains are peaceful, she said. They're just quiet enough to hide things. Kate glanced at her, a silent agreement. Quiet doesn't mean safe. Quiet just means fewer witnesses. Kenda said the first minutes were all questions, accident, exposure, something else. But when they examined her, they saw signs on her neck consistent with strangulation, evidence of restraint rather than a fall, and a kind of deliberate harm that suggested this wasn't a sudden mistake. It was intentional. It was personal. It made Kenda angry in the specific way only a seasoned investigator gets angry. Not with shouting, but with a steady internal vow that the victim would not become a statistic on a shelf. She was so young, Kenda said, voice roughening just slightly. You look at somebody like that, and you think, how did life get this far off track so fast? The scene offered almost nothing. No sign of struggle in that spot. No obvious trail, no neat answers. And the killer had been careful enough to clean out her pockets. Whoever she was, someone didn't want her identified quickly. That alone told Kenda the case would fight him. Then a tiny clue appeared in the way clues sometimes do. Small and almost insulting in its simplicity. A tattoo in the webbing of her hand. Initials. GM. Not a full name, not a phone number, not a perfect gift. Just 2 letters like a whisper from the dead. Start here. Kenda had officers check missing persons for anyone matching the age range with those initials. While that was happening, the anonymous caller called back again and did something that made Kenda's instincts tighten. Offer name. Maggie, the caller said. And then another name. Jill Youssef. Mara's eyebrows rose. Anonymous callers, she muttered, always act like they're helping while also auditioning for a secret agent role. Kate murmured, sometimes they're scared. Sometimes they're guilty. Sometimes they just like the power. Kenda nodded as if he'd heard that sentence 100 times in his own head. The first question became obvious. Who is Jill, and why is she connected to a dead teenager on a mountain road? They ran Jill Youssef through records and got an immediate hit. Recent shoplifting. Not a master criminal. Not a professional villain. Just someone who'd made a small crime look normal. But the report had a second name. A girl arrested alongside Jill. A blonde teenager known as Margaret Fetty, nicknamed Maggie. The physical description fit. The tattoo initials fit. The pieces began sliding into place with a grim click of inevitability. So they had their victim's name, Maggie Fetty, 16 years old. And then the next punch came, not for violence, but from emptiness. Maggie had no supportive family waiting for a phone call. Her mother had disavowed her. Her father was unknown. She'd become a ward of the state and had been placed in a group home, safe enough to keep a kid fed and in school, but never the same as being wanted. A year earlier, she'd run away, and since then she'd been surviving on the streets, one of those kids society notices only when it's too late. Kate felt something tighten behind his ribs. Homicide work teaches you many ugly truths, but this one is especially hard. Some victims are protected by love, and some are protected only by luck. Maggie hadn't had much of either. Kenda said the case became personal for his unit in a way the public wouldn't understand. Family doesn't always show up, he told them. So sometimes we show up as the only people who will. Mara's voice softened. That's the part people don't put on TV, she said. Kenda's eyes stayed sharp. They put on TV, he replied dryly, but they cut out the paperwork so it looks like magic. Mara perked up a fraction. Finally, a part one can relate to. They went to Jill. Early morning, knock on the door, a bleary-eyed woman trying to pretend she didn't know why detectives were there. Jill agreed to come in, and when Kenda asked about Maggie, Jill painted herself as a protective older sister figure. How she'd met Maggie not long after the girl left the group home. How she let her crash for nights. How they clicked. How they were like sisters. Jill even mentioned matching tattoos, the JM on both their hands, as if proof of closeness could also be proof of innocence. Then Kenda did the thing that separates real investigators from polite conversationalists. He told her the truth and watched what broke. Your friend Maggie is dead, he said. Jill collapsed into tears, devastated or acting devastated. Grief can be real and still hide guilt. Kenda didn't accuse her because he wanted to punish tears. He accused her because her body language screamed that she knew more than she was admitting. She couldn't sit still. Her story skipped. Her eyes searched for exits. Kenda leaned in and gave her the choice that every accomplice eventually faces. If you didn't do it, tell us your side now. Jill finally spilled what she claimed was the real story. Maggie was killed by a mutual friend, Melinda Stewart. Melinda, Jill insisted, had strangled Maggie. Jill said she was there, tried to stop it, was threatened into helping dispose of the body. The story was detailed enough to sound true and emotional enough to be convincing. Jill framed Melinda as unstable, crazy, the one who snapped for no reason. And then Kenda did what good detectives do when someone hands them a neat villain. He checked whether the villain actually fit. Melinda Stewart didn't fit on paper. Army wife, married to a sergeant, no obvious violent history. The kind of person who, in normal life, gets described as nice. But nice has never been an alibi. They tracked Melinda to a psychiatric hospital, where her husband had brought her in, claiming she was having a breakdown. When Kenda met her, she presented as deeply disturbed, childlike, disoriented, speaking in strange fragments. She referred to Maggie as if Maggie was asleep, not dead, drifting between reality and something else. Kenda questioned her carefully, trying to determine what she understood and whether she could even give a reliable statement. Melinda confirmed a lot of Jill's timeline, drinking and driving up the mountain road, looking at the city lights. But then the story flipped like a mirror. In Melinda's version, Jill was the one who attacked Maggie, and Melinda was the one trying to stop it, threatened into silence. Two women, two stories, each story blaming the other, each story reversing roles, and the truth sitting somewhere in the middle like a locked door with no key. Kenda couldn't charge either of them with murder yet, not on stories alone, not with both accounts contradicting each other and one witness clearly unstable. But he could hold them on obstruction because both admitted being there and the body had been left without a proper call for help, and someone had tried to keep the truth from walking into daylight. Then came the husband, Sergeant Daniel Stewart. He was cooperative at first, shocked, the kind of man who looked like he wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding. He told Kenda something that sounded surreal, but came out of his mouth like it was routine. Melinda had multiple personalities. Diferent personas. One of them a small child. One a dramatic clown identity. Dan insisted none of them were dangerous. He claimed Melinda was fine earlier that day, that her breakdown happened later, that he took her to the hospital because he didn't know what else to do. Kenda listened, noted it, and kept moving, because whether the explanation was mental illness or theater, there was still a dead teenager on a mountainside, and two adults who were clearly tangled up in it. They spoke to another man in the circle, James Catlin, a soldier who dated Jill on and off. His story was bland. No knowledge, no drama, nothing helpful. And the case stalled in the maddening way that makes detectives feel like they're sprinting on ice. Lots of interviews, lots of movement, no traction. Weeks passed. Jill and Melinda stayed locked up on obstruction. The department needed a hook. One witness, one crack, one truth that didn't come coded in somebody else's agenda. The hook came from a new voice. Penny Rhodes, Melinda's sister. Penny said her father had been the anonymous caller. And Penny brought a sentence that made Kenda's patience harden into steel. Sergeant Stewart had told her he destroyed evidence, burned the clothing worn the night of the murder. They're all gone, he'd said, as if burning fabric could burn away responsibility. Mara, listening to Kenda recount this, couldn't help herself. When people say I took care of everything, she whispered to Cade, it's never about care. It's about control. Cade nodded. And panic, he murmured. Control is what panic wears to look respectable. Kenda arrested Stewart for accessory and confronted him. He didn't announce the warrant ahead of time. He wanted the unguarded reaction, the moment when someone realizes their private lie has become public knowledge. Stewart admitted he burned clothes to protect his wife, claiming that was all he did. Kenda wasn't impressed. Destroying evidence in a murder case isn't a small mistake. It's a decision. Kenda pressed for other witnesses. Anyone else at the apartment that night? Stewart slipped and blurted a name. Silas Nelson, another soldier. Then, sensing the damage, Stewart tried to pull it back. He wasn't there, he claimed. But Kenda had spent a career watching lies wobble. It's hard to lie consistently. People forget which version they sold last. They drop a name and then try to vacuum it back into their mouth. Too late. Detectives found Silas Nelson at Fort Carson. Silas confirmed the things Stewart tried to erase. He was there that weekend. And he delivered the missing piece with the bluntness of someone who hadn't realized his words were a match in a gasoline room. Before Jill and Melinda left that night, Silas said the group talked about Maggie, not in worried tones, not with sympathy, with anger, with resentment, with the kind of casual cruelty people use when they've decided a vulnerable person is a problem. And the conversation wasn't just between the two women. Stewart and Catelyn were involved too. It wasn't one person snapping. It was a group drifting together into a plan, as if a life could be voted out of the room. Cade felt Mara's posture change beside him. She wasn't joking now. This was the part of the story that always haunted good investigators. Harm that becomes social. Harm that gets normalized through shared excuses. Kenda upgraded charges. Stewart and Catelyn were now fully in the frame. Catelyn was arrested, and under pressure, real pressure, the kind that comes from evidence stacking up, Catelyn finally dropped the clean story and admitted the dirty one. He lied. Teal lied. The four of them, according to his confession, conspired together. The motive Catelyn offered wasn't noble. It was the kind of motive that shows how quickly adults can rationalize cruelty. They saw Maggie as a bad influence, tied to substance use chaos, and a frightening incident that made them angry and afraid. Instead of distancing themselves or helping a 16-year-old who had already fallen through every crack in society, they chose something darker. They chose to remove the problem rather than face it. And they convinced themselves they were protecting their own lives, their own reputations, their own comfort. Catelyn admitted they even discussed methods. Not in gruesome detail the way sensational stories do, but enough to prove intent. Enough to prove planning. Enough to prove that what happened on that mountain road wasn't a sudden accident. It was an organized decision made by adults who should have known better. The final picture, as Kenda reconstructed it, was grimly simple. Jill drove, Melinda was in the back seat, Maggie in the front. Maggie was restrained and killed. Jill was not a hero in the moment. She was a participant. Afterward, they dumped Maggie's body, returned to the apartment, and began the cover-up. Stewart burned the clothes. Silence was treated like a solution. Lies were treated like cleanup. And then the court did what courts do when the evidence is finally solid. It assigned accountability. Deals were made. Sentences were handed down. One person maintained innocence on the main charge and was convicted on accessory. Another received the harshest conviction. The law drew lines and labeled them. But the case didn't end with a family sobbing in a courtroom aisle or a mother demanding answers. Because Maggie had no one. Kenda's voice lowered as he told the last part, the part that sat in his stomach even decades later. When it came time for burial arrangements, no relatives came forward. No one showed up to claim her in death, the way nobody had claimed her in life. So Kenda and his fellow officers pooled money and bought her a headstone. Something small, something basic, something that said, a human being was here. Mara exhaled, long and controlled. So, she said quietly, the system failed her until the last minute, and then the detectives became the system. Kenda looked at her. That's one way to say it, he replied. Another way is, we refused to let her disappear twice. Cade felt the anonymous note again, as if it were trying to interrupt even this moment. He understood now why Rourke had sent them here. Not just for old case wisdom, for something sharper, a reminder that misdirection doesn't always look like a mask. Sometimes it looks like two people accusing each other while four people share the truth. Sometimes it looks like chaos designed to keep you spinning until you're too tired to see the pattern. As they stood to leave, Mara glanced at Kenda's bookshelf, where the neat spines sat like disciplined soldiers. How do you live with it? She asked, softer than Cade had ever heard her. Kenda didn't hesitate. You don't live with it, he said. You carry it. And you do the work anyway. Outside, night air hit them like a reset button that didn't fully work. They walked to Cade's car without speaking for a few steps. Then Mara broke the silence the only way she knew how, by aiming humor carefully at the safe target. The universe. Gold Camp Road, she muttered. Sounds like a cheerful hiking brochure, and instead it's that. Cade started the engine. Places don't pick what happens in them, he said. People do. Mara buckled her seatbelt with a sharp click. I hate people, she announced. Cade glanced at her. You say that like you didn't just spend your day fighting for them. Mara stared out the window. That's why I'm allowed to complain, she said. It's in my contract. They drove back toward the precinct, both of them quieter, both of them thinking about Maggie's headstone and that anonymous note, and the way someone somewhere had decided to play games with fear. Cade knew one thing for certain now. Whoever called themselves the Hunter wasn't inventing a new trick. They were using an old one. Stage a story, direct the spotlight, make the investigators chase the wrong shape in the dark. And Cade had no intention of letting them. Back at the precinct, the building felt exactly the same as it always did. Lights humming, phones ringing, chairs squeaking, and a general atmosphere of this place runs on caffeine and stubbornness. And yet, Jonah Cade couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Not outside, inside him. The stories Joe Kenda had just laid on the table weren't simply old cases. They were lessons in misdirection, in how easily a narrative can be staged, and in how quickly the world decides who a victim is allowed to be. Mara Vance walked beside him down the hallway, hands in her pockets, gaze forward, voice carefully casual in that way she used when she didn't want anyone to notice she was bothered. Gold Camp Road, she muttered again, like the name itself was an insult. Sounds like a place where you take a nice photo and drink hot chocolate. Instead, it's a reminder that humans will ruin anything, even mountains. Cade pushed open the squad room door and immediately saw the evidence bag on his desk. The anonymous note, sealed and numbered, sitting there like it was waiting for applause. You think you caught the Hunter. You caught the bait. Mara stared at it, then at him. Okay, she said. I've decided I don't like poetry anymore. It's too confident. Cade didn't answer right away. He slid the case board toward him, the one they'd started building the night before, and set Kenda's two stories beside it in his mind like bookends. In one, a mask didn't just conceal a person, it pointed the police in the wrong direction. In the other, an anonymous call didn't just help, it controlled the pace, the spotlight, and the storyline. He looked at Mara. Do you see what the note is trying to do? Mara's mouth tightened. Make you feel embarrassed, she said. Like the killer is smarter. Like you're behind. Cade nodded. And make us chase the wrong thing, he added. Not the person, the persona. Mara leaned closer, eyes sharp. So we don't chase the persona. We don't chase the persona, Cade agreed. Mara exhaled through her nose. Good, she said. Because if I have to hear a grown adult call themselves the Hunter with a straight face, I'm going to need a policy memo on how not to roll my eyes in court. Cade almost smiled, but his phone buzzed again, and the almost smile died the way all almost smiles die in Homicide, quietly, with no memorial service. He checked the screen. Then he stood. Mara watched his face change. What is it? Cade grabbed his coat. Anonymous tip line, he said. Mara's posture stiffened. About what? Cade didn't answer with drama. He answered with the part that mattered. A teenage girl, he said. Runaway. Someone claims they saw her getting into a vehicle near a bus stop on the east side. And a caller said one more thing. Mara's voice dropped. What? Cade looked at her. They said don't waste time. You'll only find the bait. Mara stared at him, then at the phone, then back at him. Oh, she said softly. So we're doing this now. Cade moved fast. He didn't announce his fear to the room. He didn't feed it. He just turned it into action the way he always did. Pull missing reports, he told the nearest officer. Any teen female, last 48 hours, east side. Give me names. Give me photos. Give me last known locations. Within minutes, the case formed a shape. The missing girl was 16, recently reported absent from a group home after failing to return from an approved outing. She'd been in the system long enough that her file was thick and sad. Her social worker described her as resourceful, which is what adults say when they don't want to admit a kid has been forced to survive without real safety. The report also contained the kind of detail that always made Cade's stomach tighten. No recent family contact, limited emergency numbers, and a pattern of couch surfing whenever she disappeared. Mara skimmed the file and muttered, "I hate how the word runaway sounds like a choice." Cade nodded. "It's often a reaction," he said, "not a preference." They drove to the group home, a plain building with a cheerful sign out front that tried very hard to pretend everything inside was fine. A staff member met them at the door, tired-eyed and defensive, as if she'd already been blamed by 3 different people and didn't have the energy for a 4th. "We do our best," the staff member said quickly, before Cade even asked a question. "We can't lock them in. We're not a jail." Cade kept his voice calm. "I'm not here to blame you," he said. "I'm here to find her." Mara's tone was softer than usual, too, but still had that edge that made people answer. "Tell us who she trusts," she said. "If there's one person she calls, one place she goes." The staff member hesitated, then gave a name. Another teen, older, no longer living there, someone who had aged out and drifted into the city shadows. "They're close," she said. "Like sisters, I guess." Mara's eyes flicked to Cade for a fraction of a second. The phrase "like sisters" had followed them out of Joe Kenda's living room and walked right into their day. Cade didn't say it out loud. He didn't want to build ghosts, but he felt the pattern's silhouette. They got the older girl's address, if you could call it that. A motel on the edge of town, the kind that charged by the week and advertised quiet rooms like quiet was a luxury product. The manager didn't want to cooperate until Mara flashed her badge and said, politely, "Sir, we're at the point in the day where your cooperation is the difference between helpful citizen and name in a report. I don't enjoy paperwork, but I'm fluent in it." The manager sighed, defeated by the universal power of consequences. "Room 12, he said, "but I haven't seen her since yesterday." Room 12 smelled like instant noodles and stale air. The older girl, Nina, was inside, sitting on the edge of the bed like she'd been waiting for a knock that wouldn't end well. She looked tough in the way young people look tough when they've had to be. She didn't greet them. She studied them. Cade introduced himself, then asked the simplest question. "Where is she?" Nina scoffed. "You cops always show up after," she said. Mara lifted an eyebrow. "We showed up now," she replied. "So let's not waste a moment." Nina's eyes narrowed. "She was with me," she admitted. "She said she needed a ride. I told her no at first. Then she begged. And then this guy kept circling the stop like he was waiting." Cade's voice stayed steady. "Describe him." Nina hesitated. "Normal," she said, and the word came out bitter. "That's what makes it scary. He looked normal, like he belonged in a line at a coffee shop." Mara nodded once. "Normal is the best disguise," she said. Cade held Nina's gaze. "Did she get into a vehicle with him?" Nina looked away. "She didn't want to," she said quickly, then corrected herself. "She did, but she said it was just a ride. She said she'd text me in 10 minutes. She didn't." Mara's jaw tightened. "Do you know the vehicle?" Nina shook her head. "It was plain," she said, "like it was trying to be invisible." Mara exhaled, controlled and furious. "Why do plain vehicles always have the worst personalities?" she muttered. Cade ignored the joke, but he took the point. Plain. No markings. No identity. A vehicle designed not to be remembered. He asked about the man again. Nina finally gave a detail that mattered. A tattoo on his hand, near the thumb. 2 letters. She couldn't be sure, but she thought they were J and M. Cade felt the air in the room shift. Not because he believed in destiny, but because he believed in patterns, and patterns don't care whether you like them. Mara saw his expression. "No," she said quietly. "Don't do that. Don't let this turn into a superstition." "It's not superstition," Cade replied. "It's a marker." They moved fast after that. They pulled nearby camera footage from the bus stop area. They ran traffic cams. They checked plate readers. They coordinated with patrol and transit. They did all the things the public thinks happen automatically, when in reality those things happen because exhausted people keep deciding not to quit. A grainy camera finally caught it. A plain vehicle rolling past the stop twice, then slowing. The teen approaching. The door opening. The vehicle pulling away. Not speeding. Not dramatic. Just leaving, as if it had every right to. Mara leaned over the monitor. Cade zoomed in on the driver's hand as best they could. The image was fuzzy, but the shape of a small marking was there near the thumb. Not proof, but enough to make his mind lock onto a direction. Then another message came, this one not through the tip line. It arrived as a small package dropped at the front desk. No return address. Inside was a cheap plastic toy compass and a sticky note that said, North doesn't matter if you're chasing stories. Mara stared at the compass like it had personally offended her childhood. This person is irritating, she said. Like professionally irritating. Cade didn't argue. He turned the compass over in his hand, feeling the cheap click of it, and realized the message wasn't just taunting. It was instructing. Someone was telling them how to fail. Telling them that if they chased narratives, if they chased the hunter persona, they'd lose the real victim in the process. So Cade did the opposite. He took the persona off the board. He pulled his team together and made the room smaller with his voice. We are not calling this suspect the hunter, he said. We are not repeating their language. We are not giving them the satisfaction of a nickname. An officer raised a hand. So what do we call him? Cade didn't hesitate. We call him the suspect, he said. And we call her the missing girl. Mara nodded approvingly. Finally, she muttered. A brand I can support. Cade set tasks like chess moves. He had one team focus purely on the vehicle. Routes, camera hits, timing, places it could hide briefly without notice. Another team focused purely on the girl. Her known contacts, social media, any patterns of where she felt safe. And he assigned Mara something specific. Find the person behind the messages, he told her. Not the words. The delivery. Who has access to our building? Who knows our rhythms? Mara's smile turned sharp. Oh, she said. So I get to hunt the hunter without calling him that. Cade gave her a look. Don't. Mara held up a hand. I won't, she promised. I'll call it aggressively investigating. The break came from a place that would have sounded ridiculous if it hadn't been real, a pawn shop. A clerk called and saying a man had tried to sell a teenage girl's necklace, distinctive, described in the missing report. The clerk had been trained to notice these things, and for once, training did what it was supposed to do. Cade and Mara arrived quickly, approached calmly, and spoke to the clerk. The man had left, but the clerk remembered his vehicle, plain, light-colored, forgettable. And he remembered one more thing. When the man had reached for the necklace, he'd seen the tattoo near the thumb. 2 letters. Mara let out a slow breath. Okay, she said. Now it's not a ghost. Now it's a receipt. They tracked the vehicle through cameras near the pawn shop and found it heading toward an industrial area on the outskirts. Storage units, warehouses, the kind of place where people can exist without neighbors noticing. Cade felt his body settle into that intense calm that arrives right before action. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't speak it. He just moved. They surrounded the area with patrol. They approached with clear commands and careful steps. They found a vehicle tucked behind a row of units, plain as a lie. And in one of those units, they found the missing girl alive, shaken, frightened, but breathing, responding, and immediately pulled into the safest arms they could offer. Medical care, warmth, and the simple, extraordinary fact of being found before the story ended badly. Mara exhaled like she'd been holding her lungs all day. Okay, she whispered. We like this version. We are fans of this version. Cade watched the paramedics guide the girl out gently, a blanket around her shoulders, her eyes darting as if she didn't trust the world to stay stable. He kept his voice soft when he spoke to her, offered her his jacket without making it a moment, and felt the smallest quiet relief settle in his chest. Relief that didn't erase anger, but made the anger usable instead of destructive. The suspect was arrested without spectacle. He tried to talk. He tried to frame it as misunderstanding. He tried to make it sound like he was the victim of overreaction. Cade listened long enough to document what needed documenting and then cut him off with the calm truth. You don't get to rewrite this, he said. Not anymore. Back at the precinct, the desk felt different. The anonymous note was still there, sealed and smug. The toy compass sat beside it like a child's joke that had grown teeth. Mara dropped into a chair and stared at the ceiling. I'm going to say something very brave, she announced. Cade glanced at her. Go ahead. Mara's voice was dead serious. I hate compasses. Cade's mouth twitched. That's your brave statement. Mara nodded. They act helpful, but they're always pointing somewhere you don't want to go. Cade leaned back, exhausted. We got her back, he said quietly. Mara's sarcasm softened. We did, she replied. And we didn't chase the nickname. Cade looked at the board again, then at the evidence bag, then at Mara. Joe Kenda was right, he said. Mara lifted an eyebrow. About what? Cade's voice stayed calm. Sometimes family doesn't show up, he said. So sometimes we show up as the only people who will. Mara stared for a beat, then reached into her pocket and placed the cartoon dog sticker on the corner of the case file like a small, absurd salute. Fine, she said softly, but I'm still filing my joy report. Cade shut the drawer containing the anonymous note. Not because he believed drawers could contain evil, but because he refused to let a message sit out and own his desk. Then he stood, grabbed his coat again, and felt the day's truth settle into something simple. The person sending notes wanted story. Cade would not give them one. He would give them a process. And somewhere out there, in the city's quiet corners, whoever had been whispering bait and Hunter and North had just learned the one thing they didn't want to learn. Jonah Cade wasn't interested in being an audience. He was interested in being the ending. By the time the missing girl was safe and the suspect was in custody, the precinct had already started doing what it always did after a crisis. It tried to pretend it was a normal building again. Phones rang. The copier wheezed like an asthmatic dragon. Someone microwaved something that smelled like regret. And the fluorescent lights kept buzzing overhead with the emotional warmth of a refrigerated aisle. Jonah Cade stood at the edge of the interview room hallway, watching paramedics' paperwork get swapped for booking paperwork, which is the world's least inspiring relay race. Mara Vance hovered beside him with her arms crossed, eyes tracking every movement like she could keep reality in line by staring hard enough. We did good, Mara said, but she said it like she was daring the universe to disagree. Cade nodded once. We got there in time, he replied. Mara exhaled, then looked toward the evidence locker hallway like it personally owed her an explanation. And we didn't say the nickname, she added. Cade's mouth twitched. No nickname. Mara tapped her temple. I'm proud of us. This is growth. Cade didn't let himself enjoy the moment too much, because moments were fragile, and the city loved breaking fragile things. He walked into the interview room where the suspect sat, hands cuffed, posture stiff, trying to look like the victim of a misunderstanding rather than the author of one. The man's eyes flicked up, assessing, calculating, searching for whatever angle would make him feel less small. Mara leaned on the doorframe, casual in the way only a person with full confidence and zero patience can be casual. Okay, she said. Let's do this in a modern style. You talk, we listen, and then we tell you why none of it is going to work. The suspect's jaw tightened. I didn't hurt anyone, he said quickly. Cade kept his voice calm. That's not the standard, he said. The standard is what you did. The suspect leaned forward slightly, like he wanted to make this a conversation between equals. I was helping, he insisted. She needed a ride. People overreacted. You know how it is. Mara blinked slowly. I don't know how it is, she said. It's when adults try to turn a teenager's fear into a customer service complaint. Cade opened his notebook, not because he needed notes to remember, but because the act itself reminded everyone in the room that this wasn't theater. Your vehicle was seen circling, he said. Your presence was reported. The girl didn't return. And you have a tattoo near your thumb that matches a detail given by a witness. You can keep saying help if you want. It just won't change those facts. The suspect's face twitched at the mention of the tattoo, the smallest crack in a practiced mask. He glanced down at his own hand like it had betrayed him. It's nothing, he muttered. Mara smiled without warmth. It's never nothing, she said. It's just usually something stupid. Cade didn't push for drama. He pushed for structure, timeline, movements, where he went, what he intended, what he was told. And slowly, in the way people do when they realize the walls are not going to move for them, the suspect stopped trying to rewrite the scene and started trying to shrink his role inside it. I didn't come up with the messages, he said, eyes darting. That wasn't me. Cade didn't react. Then who, he asked. The suspect swallowed. Online, he said. Someone in a forum. They said they were testing the police. They said you always chase stories. Mara's eyebrows rose. Oh, she said. So you volunteered to be someone's science project. The suspect bristled. I didn't volunteer. Mara tilted her head. You rented the role and showed up in costume, she said. That's volunteering with extra steps. Cade's pen moved. He didn't need a confession to the whole universe. He needed the thread. Name, he said. The suspect hesitated. I never met them, he insisted. It was messages. A handle. They called themselves. Cade cut him off gently. Don't say it, he warned. Mara nodded firmly. Do not, she agreed. We are not giving that word any oxygen. The suspect blinked, confused. Why not? Cade held his gaze. Because names are power, he said, and you already gave them enough. The suspect licked his lips. They said the police like you are predictable, he whispered. They said you chase the obvious. They said you catch bait. Mara stared at him. You know what's predictable? She said. Someone who thinks they're clever because they read 2 true crime posts and learned the word bait. Cade ignored the sting in her voice and stayed on track. How did they contact you? He asked. Platform. Method. The suspect finally gave something usable. A messaging app, a series of burner accounts, instructions that weren't detailed enough to be a blueprint, but clear enough to show intent. Show up, circle, intimidate, leave a note, watch the response. The person behind the messages wanted reaction, not money. They wanted control, not profit. They wanted the city to feel watched. When Cade stepped out of the room, he didn't feel satisfied. He felt confirmed. The taunts weren't random. They were part of a method. Direct attention, create noise, train the police to chase the wrong shape in the dark. Mara followed him into the hallway, voice low. So the guy we caught is what, a delivery service? Cade nodded. A participant, he said, not the author. Mara's mouth tightened. I hate authors, she said. They always think the ending belongs to them. Cade walked back to his desk, where the toy compass sat like a joke that had learned manners and decided not to laugh out loud. Mara picked it up and turned it over, squinting. I want to throw this into a river, she announced. Cade Saturday don't, he said. Evidence. Mara sighed dramatically and placed it down as if it might bite. Fine, she said, but I'm going to emotionally throw it into a river. Cade didn't answer because his mind was already moving. The delivery, the access, the confidence. This wasn't someone guessing. This was someone watching, someone with timing, someone who understood how a police building breathes. Who could drop a package at our front desk without getting stopped? Cade asked aloud. Mara's eyes sharpened. People who belong, she said. Or people who know how to look like they belong. Cade stood. Front desk logs, he said. Visitor footage. Badge access records. And we start with the obvious. Mara followed, already pulling her hair back like she was about to interrogate the concept of security itself. They went to the front desk with a night clerk, an older man with a patient face, looked up as if detectives arriving to ask questions was just another category of weather. We need footage, Cade said. The clerk nodded and slid a thumb toward the monitor. Already pulled it, he said. You're not the first to ask tonight. Mara blinked. Who else asked? The clerk hesitated. A woman, he said she was from admin. Mara's posture changed instantly. Did you recognize her? The clerk shook his head. But she had a badge, he said, and she had that walk. You know the walk. The I'm busy, don't question me walk. Mara stared. That walk is basically the department's official dance. Cade watched the footage. A woman entered, hood up, head slightly down, moving fast. She flashed a badge too quickly for the camera to catch clean. She didn't pause. She didn't hesitate. She dropped something at the desk and left like she had done it 100 times. Mara leaned closer. She knows where the camera is, she said quietly. She angles away. Cade nodded. And she knows the clerk won't challenge the badge walk. Mara made a sound of pure, controlled irritation. I hate the badge walk, she said. We need to retrain everyone. From now on, if someone looks confident, you should be suspicious. Cade didn't smile. That would include you. Mara looked at him. Exactly, she said. I'm a risk. They pulled access logs. They compared timestamps. They checked who had been in the building around the delivery times. The list wasn't short because police buildings aren't castles. their revolving doors with forms attached. But one detail stood out. The packages arrived on shifts when a certain temporary contractor had been scheduled near the admin area. Someone hired through an agency, someone whose background check was basic, someone who had enough access to learn rhythms without anyone paying attention. Mara read the name and frowned. This is going to be one of those situations where we all say, I saw her once, isn't it? Kate nodded. Probably. Mara leaned back in her chair. I love bureaucracy, she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. It's so comforting. It's like a blanket that sometimes hides a snake. Cade pushed a photo across the desk, a screen grabbed from footage, cleaned up as much as possible. Find her, he said. Not online, not rumors. Find her in the real world. Mara picked up the photo. Oh, I'm going to find her, she said. And I'm going to be polite about it, which is how you'll know I'm furious. Before they could move, dispatch called again. Another report. Another plane vehicle. Another attempt to turn a public space into a stage. This time it wasn't a bus stop. It was a community center, early evening, an open meeting, people gathering for support, for recovery, for stability. The kind of place that should feel safe. Cade felt the cold clarity of the pattern locking in. Old lessons echoing forward. A stage crime isn't just concealment, it's direction. A masked appearance isn't just fear. It's a signpost pointing you where the offender wants you to look. Mara saw his face. No, she said softly. Don't tell me. Cade grabbed his coat. Community center, he said. Now. They arrived to flashing patrol lights, and people huddled in small clusters, talking fast, eyes wide, every sentence tripping over the next. A staff member met them at the entrance, shaking, trying to be brave for the people behind her. Everyone's okay, she said quickly. Nobody's seriously hurt. But there was a confrontation. Someone grabbed a purse and ran. They had a mask. Cade didn't dramatize it. He didn't say, this is it. He just asked the next right question. Where did they go? The staff member pointed toward the parking lot. Toward the trees, she said, like they knew where the dark was. Mara's voice stayed controlled. Any cameras? She asked. Yes, the staff member said. But they moved like they knew where the cameras were too. Cade felt anger rise, not hot, not explosive, but steady. The offender wasn't just committing acts. They were shaping the department's attention, trying to prove predictability, trying to make Cade and Mara dance to their rhythm. They pulled footage, grainy, a masked figure, quick movement, a grabbed purse, a calm retreat into shadow. No needless harm, no chaos, just a staged moment designed to push buttons. Mara watched it twice, jaw tight. This is a rehearsal, she said. Cade nodded. It's conditioning, he replied. They want the public scared. They want us busy. Mara pointed at the screen. And they want us to call it what they call it, she said. Because then it becomes real. Cade turned away from the monitor. We don't, he said. We treat it like what it is, a suspect committing crimes and leaving messages. Mara exhaled slowly. Fine, she said, but I'm still going to say, in my head, that this person has the personality of a sticky note. Cade's phone buzzed again, and for once it wasn't a call. It was a text from an unknown number with a single line. You learn fast. Now learn who to trust. Mara saw it over his shoulder and made a noise that was half laugh, half threat. Oh, she said, I'm going to trust my instinct to throw things. Cade's voice stayed even. We don't react, he reminded her. Mara stared at him. I'm not reacting, she said. I'm forecasting. Back at the precinct, they didn't announce the text. They didn't feed it into the building's gossip bloodstream. They moved quietly, because quiet is how you start a show. Cade arranged a controlled internal check. Limited knowledge, limited access, a small circle of people who would keep the process clean. Mara, meanwhile, did what she did best when she wasn't allowed to punch the universe. She hunted details. She visited the temp agency with a smile so polite it could have been a warning label. She asked for employment records like she was ordering coffee. She got a name, an address, and a recent contact number. And when she brought it back, she dropped it on Cade's desk like a gift wrapped in paperwork. Found her, Mara said. Cade looked up. That was fast. Mara shrugged. The agency was very helpful, she said. They're terrified of liability. Liability is the closest thing to truth some organizations have. They went to the address that evening. An apartment building with too many mailboxes and not enough lighting, the kind of place where people can disappear in plain sight because everyone is busy surviving their own schedule. They knocked. No answer. They waited. They listened. They watched the hallway for movement. Mara leaned close to Cade and whispered, "If she opens the door and tries the badge walk, I'm going to scream." Cade whispered back, "Don't scream." Mara nodded solemnly. "I will scream internally." A door opened down the hall. A woman stepped out with a tote bag and a posture that screamed, "I have places to be, and I do not want conversation." She froze when she saw them, eyes widening just slightly, just enough. Cade spoke calmly. "We need to talk," he said. The woman glanced toward the stairwell, calculating. Mara stepped subtly into that line, blocking it without making a show of it. "You're not in trouble for walking," Mara said pleasantly. "You're in trouble for lying." The woman's throat moved. "I don't know what you mean," she said, and it was the kind of sentence that always arrives late to the truth. Cade held up a photo from the footage. "You were at the desk," he said. "You dropped the package." The woman's gaze flicked to it, then away. "I was paid," she said quickly. "I didn't write the messages." Mara's smile vanished. "Who paid you?" she asked, voice suddenly flat. The woman swallowed. "I never met them," she insisted. "It was instructions. A voice call. They said it was a social experiment. They said the police are predictable." Mara leaned in slightly. "And you believe that," she said, "because you thought fear was a fun hobby." The woman flinched. "I needed money," she whispered. Cade kept it procedural. "Name, method, contact, anything you have." The woman gave them a number, a handle, a time pattern, calls that came when she was alone, instructions that sounded rehearsed, like someone reading from script. And then she said the one detail that made Cade's eyes sharpen. "They knew your names," she said. "They said Cade and Vance like they were characters." Mara stared. "I hate being a character," she muttered. Cade didn't show anger. He stored it. "They're watching," he said quietly. Mara nodded, voice low, "and they want an audience." Cade looked at her. "They won't get one," he said. On the way back to the precinct, Mara finally let herself breathe like a normal person. "Okay," she said, "so we have a middle person, a temp worker, a delivery chain. This is like a crime version of online shopping." Cade glanced at her. "Don't make it cute." Mara shrugged. "I'm not making it cute," she said. "I'm making it tolerable. There's a difference." Cade's phone buzzed again, but this time it was an internal alert. Another attempted staged incident had been reported and interrupted quickly by patrol. No one harmed. Suspect fled. No arrest. A message was left behind, printed, not handwritten this time, like the offender was upgrading their production values. Mara leaned over as Cade read it. "Let me guess," she said. Something smug. Cade didn't read it aloud. He just folded it, placed it in an evidence bag, and shut the drawer with the kind of finality that said, "You don't get to live on my desk." Mara watched him. "You know what I'm learning," she said softly. Cade looked up. Mara's face was tired, but her eyes were steady. "This person doesn't want to win by force," she said. "They want to win by making everyone feel tired, making everyone feel watched, making everyone feel like the story belongs to them." Cade nodded. "And they want us to mistrust each other," he said. Mara's mouth tightened. "Joke's on them," she said. "I already mistrust you. You drink office coffee willingly." Cade's mouth twitched. "And yet you work with me." Mara nodded. "Because you do the work," she said. Then, after a beat, she added, "and because I enjoy yelling at you about paperwork." Cade leaned back, exhaustion settling into his bones like gravity. Outside, the city moved like it always did. People driving home, kids laughing, streetlights blinking on, ordinary life trying its best to stay ordinary. Inside, Cade felt the case turning from a string of incidents into something sharper. A coordinated effort to manipulate attention and trust. He didn't know the author yet, but he knew the method, and he knew the antidote. No nicknames, no stage, no audience, just process, patience, and the kind of stubborn teamwork that doesn't look glamorous on television because it's too busy quietly winning. Wednesday arrived with the kind of cold that makes even confident people walk faster and humble. Lena stepped into the newsroom and immediately knew something had shifted because Vanessa had written 2 words on the whiteboard in thick marker, as if the board had committed a crime and needed a warning. The door. Grace stood there with her arms folded, staring at the words like they might blink first. Omar was already on his second coffee, which in Omar's world meant the timeline has started fighting back. Nico had placed the rubber duck on a stack of papers like it was guarding evidence. The duck scarf was back, neatly tied, which suggested Nico had decided the duck deserved both warmth and authority. Lena pointed at the whiteboard. "We're at that part." Vanessa nodded. "We're at that part," she said, where the story stops being about background and becomes about confrontation. Grace corrected gently. "Not confrontation like a fight," she said. "Confrontation like a question that stands in the doorway and doesn't move." Omar tapped the table with a pen. "We also need to show what happens when the door doesn't open," he said, "because that's important too." Nico raised his hand. "The duck has a statement." Vanessa didn't look at him. "No." Nico lowered his hand. "The duck will issue a statement later through its representatives." Lena sat down and opened her notebook. In her head, Mara Quinn had reached the same stage. It was the point where reporting stops feeling like research and starts feeling like walking up to the edge of someone's life and politely asking if the truth is home. Mara's car in the novel smelled faintly of coffee and patience. Eli sat in the passenger seat, holding a folder like it contained a live animal. Tomas sat in the back with his hands folded, calm enough to make you suspicious. Eli whispered, "We have the question. We have the records. We have the pattern. We have the alleged name." Mara kept her eyes on the road. "And we have responsibility," she said. "We don't accuse. We ask. We offer a chance to respond." Eli nodded. "Yes," he said. "We offer him a chance to say, this is all a misunderstanding. And then we politely ask why the misunderstanding has such consistent paperwork." Tomas said, "In plain terms, you're going to a door where everyone hopes you'll get tired before you knock." Mara parked 2 streets away, not for drama, but for restraint. She didn't want a spectacle. She wanted conversation. She walked toward the address with the calm steadiness of someone who knew panic would only serve the wrong people. The street looked like normal. That's what always landed hardest. A snow shovel leaning against a porch. A mailbox with a last name. A little wreath in a window. The quiet hum of ordinary life. Eli whispered, "I don't like how normal it looks." Mara didn't answer. She didn't need to. Normal was the point. If the allegations were true, then normal wasn't comfort. Normal was camouflage. She walked up the steps and rang the bell. Nothing. She waited, counted slowly, because sometimes people genuinely are in the shower or on a call, or simply living. She rang again, gentler, giving the benefit of doubt the way you give someone space on a crowded sidewalk. Still nothing. Eli shifted his weight. "Maybe the doorbell is broken," he whispered. Mara looked at him. "Don't," she whispered back. Eli nodded. "I will not joke about the doorbell," he said. "The doorbell is innocent." Mara knocked, firm but not aggressive. She held her posture open. She didn't block the door. She didn't lean in. She didn't perform intimidation. She just stood there with a question. Footsteps. A curtain moved slightly. Then silence again. Mara didn't narrate this moment like a thriller. She wrote it like reality, the uncomfortable pause where you can feel someone making a decision on the other side. Open or don't. Speak or don't. Own or don't. Tomas's voice was low behind her. In plain terms, he said, "This is the moment where the story reveals its shape." Mara waited. Finally, the door opened a crack, not wide, not welcoming. A face appeared, eyes sharp, voice cautious. "Yes." Mara's tone was calm, respectful. "My name is Mara Quinn," she said. "I'm a journalist. We've reached out before with questions. I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond." The person's eyes narrowed. "About what?" Mara didn't list accusations like weapons. She stated the situation as neutrally as possible. "There are allegations in another jurisdiction connecting you to a network that facilitated unauthorized crossings," she said. "There have been tragedies linked to those alleged operations. We're reporting on the system, and on what agencies are doing or not doing. Your name appears in the materials we've reviewed. We want her side. Eli held his breath like a child, trying not to squeak during a school assembly. The person's face tightened. I have nothing to say, he said. Mara nodded. I understand, she said. But I do want to confirm. Are you denying involvement? The person's eyes flicked past her shoulder, checking the street. I'm not talking, he said again. Mara kept her voice steady. If you prefer to respond through a lawyer, we can include that, she said. We've reached out multiple times. We'll note your decision not to comment if that remains the case. The door began to close. Mara didn't lunge. She didn't block. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, clear and calm, if there's a misunderstanding, this is the moment to correct it. The door closed. Eli exhaled like he'd been underwater. That, he whispered, was the quietest no I've ever heard. Tomas said, in plain terms, silence isn't proof. But it is information. Mara nodded slowly. She stood a moment longer, not to pressure, but to let the moment settle. Then she stepped away, walked back to the car, and made the kind of note reporters make when the world won't give them a quote. Contact attempted. Declined. Back in Lena's newsroom, Grace listened to Lena reading the draft of that scene out loud, and she stopped her mid-sentence. Keep it even cleaner, Grace said. No theatrical language. No, he refused to face the truth. He declined to comment. Lena nodded. Agreed, she said. We let the audience feel the weight without us pushing. Omar pointed at the timeline. After that door, he said, we pivot to the real question. What does law enforcement do with a name like that? Vanessa wrote it on the board. If not him, then who stops it? Nico whispered to the duck. The door is not the ending, he said. The door is just where the story looks you in the eye. The next day in the novel, Mara went to the agencies again. Not with anger, with documentation. She requested interviews. She requested process explanations. She requested clarity. She requested the thing bureaucracies are allergic to, specificity. A spokesperson on the phone said, we can't confirm or deny. Mara asked, can you explain what triggers action in a cross-border case? A pause. The spokesperson said, we evaluate information. Mara nodded as if the phone could see her. What kind of information? She asked. Another pause. The spokesperson said, various. Eli, sitting beside Mara, mouthed silently, various. Then he mimed holding a trophy. Mara covered her mouth with her hand to stop herself from smiling. Thank you, she said politely into the phone, because politeness was armor. If you can't discuss this case, can you discuss general procedures? What steps exist for coordination when another jurisdiction alleges involvement in serious harm? The spokesperson's voice softened slightly. We take all allegations seriously, they said. Mara's pen hovered. Then she asked, what does seriously look like in practice? Silence. Tomas, listening, said quietly. In plain terms, they don't want to paint themselves into a corner. Mara ended the call without drama. She logged it. She moved to the next, and the next. Each interaction was a small lesson in how systems protect themselves. That night, Dana called Mara again, careful, quiet. You got the door? Dana asked. Mara didn't pretend she didn't understand. Yes, she said. Dana exhaled. They always do that, she said. They rely on the door. Mara frowned. What do you mean? Dana's voice held tired clarity. They rely on the public imagining the door is the end, she said. They rely on you getting a non-answer and the audience thinking, well, I guess that's that. But the door is not where accountability lives. Accountability lives in paperwork, in priorities, in follow-through. Mara leaned back. So, if the door is not the end, she said, what is? Dana paused. A decision, she said. A decision to treat it as a priority. Mara's mind returned to the sticky note she'd once imagined under Dana's keyboard. Speed is not the same as safety, and she felt the truth underneath it. Attention is the only currency the public has. Eli looked at Mara. We're going to need a metaphor, he said, half joking. Mara raised an eyebrow. Try me. Eli pointed toward the window where snow drifted against the glass. It's like the system is a house, he said, and the cold keeps getting in through the cracks. The system keeps arguing about whose job it is to fix the crack, while everyone inside is freezing. Tomas nodded. In plain terms, he said, that's actually a good metaphor. Eli blinked. Did I just get validated? Mara said, don't get used to it. In Lena's newsroom, Nico heard the metaphor and immediately tried to improve it. What if, he said, the cracks are shaped like paperwork? Vanessa pointed at him without looking. No. Nico nodded. Okay, he said. We will keep the cracks normal-shaped. Lena rewrote the next passage to carry the story forward with steady momentum. She kept everything ads-friendly and respectful. No graphic details, no cruelty, no instructions for wrongdoing, no hate, no sensational flair. The humor stayed in the human moments, Eli's awful metaphors, Nico's duck diplomacy, the absurdity of official language that was technically polite while functionally empty. In the novel, Mara returned to Farah at the community center and asked the question she knew would hurt. What do you want viewers to do? Farah didn't say be angry. She didn't say take sides. She said something simpler and more powerful. I want them to remember, she said. I want them to keep asking, because the system counts on forgetting. Mara nodded slowly. She thought about the half-life of urgency. She thought about how easy it was to move on when you weren't the one living in the after. She left the community center and sat in her car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing evenly. Then she did what she always did when a story tried to overwhelm her. She made it actionable without being preachy. She wrote the next line of her script like a promise, not a threat. We asked the door. The door stayed quiet. So now we asked the desks behind the door, who is responsible for the crack, and why has it been left open this long? Then she wrote another line, the one that felt like the true hinge. Because when accountability becomes various, the public becomes vulnerable. Back in Lena's newsroom, Vanessa listened to Lena read that line and nodded once. That's it, she said. That's the chapter. Nico lifted the duck slightly. The duck, he said, approves. Vanessa stared. Nico lowered the duck. The duck, he said quickly, will not be quoted. And Lena kept writing, steady, careful, human, because the door was only one moment in the story, and the story was bigger than any door.